Alright, well, first of all, thank you for coming. My name is Greg. I've been interested in Bitcoin for about 5 or 6 years now. And I'm more of a sort of like web developer. I've made websites since I was about 16. Just find it really interesting. You make something like on your computer, put it on the internet, and everyone can see it. I just find that really interesting. And then I found Bitcoin about, like I said, 5 or 6 years ago. And the first time I used it, I thought it was very interesting. I thought, wow, why have we not had this technology before? So I sort of got involved in it and I tried to figure out how it worked. And yeah, I got sucked in that way. And I've been trying to figure out how it works ever since and trying to explain how it works as well. So I'm currently making a website that tries to explain how it works in simple terms as possible. And I've started doing presentations because I thought that'd be a good way to help explain it and help me to understand it better as well. So before I get started, I think everyone here has probably used Bitcoin before, but I thought I'd do it anyway just to show you, making a transaction, show you all about what Bitcoin's for and what exists. So on here, I've got my my wallet. I use Electrum. I think it's a very good wallet. And on here, I've got a wallet called. Okay, it's not connected, which is it's a great way to start. Try a different one. But I use Green on my phone. It's by Blockstream. It usually works very well, but I'm going to use Electrum on here now because that didn't work very well just then. So, but I'm going to make a very simple transaction now, just to show you a transaction in action. So, if I just scan this. There we are, enter the amount. I send a very small amount, about 7p's worth of Bitcoin. Pay. And there we are, transaction's been sent. And then hopefully it should pop up here now in a few seconds, show me that the transaction has arrived in this wallet. So there it is. So that looks quite pointless. I just made a transaction because I just sent the transaction some Bitcoins from here, from this phone to this computer here. So it's gone like 3 feet, but actually it's traveled all the way around the world. And it's probably on about 8,000 computers at the moment. Waiting to be mined onto the blockchain. And then when it gets mined onto the blockchain, that transaction is permanent. And I suppose what's interesting is that I sent it to this computer here, but this could have been anyone in the world. It could be on the other side of the world, and it could have been for millions of pounds, and it would have gone through in exactly the same way. No one would have stopped it, and no one has to ask permission to receive those funds. And that's what the power of Bitcoin is, and why I think it's interesting. Anyway, so I'm not here to sell you on Bitcoin. I think everyone here is sort of interested in Bitcoin anyway, but I thought it'd be a good way to show you an example of how Bitcoin works, why I find it interesting. Right, so like I said, my name is Greg, and I like trying to explain how Bitcoin works. So this one's going to be about getting started with Bitcoin. It's how I think, or the best of my knowledge, the best way to get going with Bitcoin safely and securely. So I'll start with basically getting a wallet, how to set up a wallet and how to use a wallet. Then I go on to buying, where to buy them from, like safely, and how that works. Then I go through a transaction and what happens when you make a transaction and what's going on there. Then I go finally into securing. So when you've got some Bitcoins, how can you look after them to make sure they don't get stolen? Lastly, I do a quick summary at the end, just basically to repeat myself, so I thought it'd be good. Anyway, so getting started with Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? Basically, Bitcoin is just a computer program. I think it's quite over here. You can download onto your computer, like any other program you've ever downloaded. When you download the program, when you run it, it'll connect to other computers over the world running the same program, the Bitcoin program. And they all connect together to create a network of computers running the same program. And that's basically Bitcoin. Each of these computers, when they're running Bitcoin, they'll have their own large file called the blockchain, and this is just one big file of transactions. So when you run Bitcoin for the first time, all of these other computers called nodes, they will start sending you each individual block from the blockchain, like so. So you'll be downloading the entire blockchain, or every transaction that's taken place in Bitcoin since it started in 2009. Your node then, as it's receiving the blocks, it'll verify them to make sure they're all correct, and then store them on your computer until you finally downloaded the entire file. And after you've got the file, then you can start making transactions. And a transaction, basically, you insert into the network and it propagates the entire network, and so everyone gets a copy of that transaction. And that's basically how Bitcoin works. It's all basically a file sharing program over a network, but it's a bit more to it than that, but that's ultimately what it is. One of the major downsides or drawbacks of using Bitcoin, the official program, is the size of the blockchain, because it's had it holds every transaction ever made since 2009. It's quite a large file. It's currently sitting about 250 gigabytes, so it'll take a while for you to download that blockchain to start with. Plus, you need the hard drive space in your computer. So this laptop here is quite a nice one, but it only came with a 500 gigabyte hard drive, so it's already used half of it up. I was like, so, you know, it is usable on most computers, but it does mean you need to have some hard drive space to be able to run this program and join the network of computers. And that's what I'd recommend. If you're really interested in Bitcoin, start running a node and become part of the network. I think that's a good way to start and learn more about Bitcoin. However, what if you don't have the computer or the inclination to really run a node? You don't want to be downloading the program, and when you do run the program, it does use a bit of processing power as well. You don't want to be running it on your computer. You don't actually have to download a node and hold the whole blockchain to be able to use Bitcoin. So what you can do instead, you can get what's called a Bitcoin wallet. I'm sure everyone's used a wallet before, but basically a wallet is just another program you can download onto your phone or onto your computer, but you don't have to download the blockchain. So what it'll do, it basically just interacts with a node on the network. So instead of you becoming a node and having to hold the blockchain and process all the transactions as they're coming through, you can just get a little program on your phone and then interact with the blockchain like I did in that first example. So what it'll do then when you make a transaction, like I did then, it'll send a transaction into one of the nodes, and then that'll spread across the network in the same way. So it's a lot easier if you're just getting started with Bitcoin and you don't want to download the full program, just to use a wallet, and that's what a lot of people do, I think. But if you really want to get into the spirit of Bitcoin, run a node. So which wallet do I recommend? This will change from month to month probably, but at the moment, and there are quite a few to choose from. So these aren't necessarily the best ones ever, but the ones I would recommend. On your phone, on mobile, I like one called Blockstream Green. It's very simple. It's created by the people, a company called Blockstream, and they have a lot of very good developers that work there that I respect. So that's why I'd recommend them. On your computer, on your desktop, I would highly recommend one called Electrum. I think it's by far and above the best one to use for reliability and security. Not the best looking one, but I trust it, and that's the most important thing when it comes to Bitcoin. By the way, at the end of this, I got a sheet here with all my recommended stuff on, so don't feel like you have to make notes or anything. So those are two I recommend. But like I said, there are a lot to choose from, and whichever you choose, up to you. But make sure you're safe and look into what you're using. So what does a wallet do? When you run a wallet for the first time, or when you use a wallet, it'll give you these things called addresses. And these are like your account numbers that you can use to give to people so they can send you Bitcoins. So a wallet ultimately just manages your addresses so people can send you Bitcoins. And they look like this. This is a bit of an old style address. They've changed a bit recently. They've been a bit upgraded, but they're basically just long strings of characters and numbers, and they're all unique. So every time you have an address, it's unique to you and no one else has that address. This isn't terribly important for this presentation, but I thought it would be good to mention anyway. But for every address you have, there is a secret private key where that address came from. And this is like your sort of secret password. So if you had like a bank account, this is like your account number. And imagine this being your password. So this is all to do with cryptography, but addresses where you receive Bitcoins. And when you come to spend those Bitcoins, the private key in the background will unlock them for you. So when you're using a wallet on a day-to-day basis, you won't actually ever see the private key, but it's important to know that it is there in the background, and that's something that is private that looks after your Bitcoins. So, but on a day-to-day basis, all you will interact with is an address. Your wallet will generate lots of addresses for you. So when you create a wallet, you won't actually just get one address and that's it forever. Addresses are very cheap and cheap to produce. So for every payment you receive, you probably give yourself a new address to receive Bitcoins to, and that's fine. There's no limit to how many addresses there are in the world. You can probably generate 1 million addresses every second for the rest of your life and not generate the same one or the same one as anyone else ever again. So don't feel bad about that. So how do you send Bitcoins? Everything right so far, by the way? Everything I'm going quite fast, I think, but I think this is quite a technical.
So
Yes.
why
Yeah.
do you need more than one address? Why would you have more than one address, as it were?
Oh yeah, good question. For privacy, basically, if you were to receive all the bitcoins to the same address, and then that address got tagged to you somehow, all those payments could be traced to you. But if you create lots of different addresses, so one here for that, then if you're getting different payments to those addresses, they're not connected together.
That's so many questions.
That's fine. It might make sense in a minute when I get into transactions and stuff. But it's more for privacy, and it's fine to do so. So you're not going to run out of addresses. So how do you send bitcoins? Or better question, where do bitcoins live? They don't actually live on your phone. Bitcoin, well, they live in the blockchain, basically, bitcoins. So if you look inside the blockchain, bitcoins live in batches called outputs, and they each have a number of bitcoins inside them, and each of those outputs has a lock on them as well. So the best analogy I can give for how this works, it's like going into a bank. You know, they have like sort of like safe deposit boxes, a big room full of safe deposit boxes, and everyone has their own safe deposit box with a key. Well, imagine inside the blockchain, it's one big room of safe deposit boxes, and those deposit boxes are called outputs. So when you want to send someone bitcoins, what's going on there? What's actually happening? So when I made that transaction then, what happened inside the blockchain or across the network? Well, to send someone bitcoins, I first of all need their address, so they'll give me their address. And then when I create a transaction like I did then, my wallet will be looking into the blockchain for a batch of bitcoins that I own. So let's say my wallet knows I own this batch of bitcoins here. So it'll grab that, and then from that safe deposit box, it'll create a new one, and then put a new lock on it. And that lock will contain the address of the person I want to send the bitcoins to. And then finally, once I've created that movement of opening a deposit box and creating a new one, my wallet will use the private key to unlock the batch of bitcoins that I own, and then that's spent then, like so. So that is basically how a transaction works. The lock contains your address, and to unlock it with a key, you need your private key. And so basically, all a wallet is doing is managing your keys and your locks. So from there, after it's made the transaction, your wallet will broadcast it into a node on the network, and then that transaction will spread across the entire network, will propagate the network, and until finally it makes its way into the blockchain. And then as you can see here, this output has been spent, and there's a new output here with a lock on it belonging with an address to this person. So now it belongs to this person, and only they can spend it. And so that's how you own bitcoins. So bitcoins don't really live on your phone or on your computer. They live in the blockchain. So if you're running a full node, you'll have the bitcoins there, but really your computer and phone handles the keys that manage the locks on them. That makes sense? Any questions on that? Yes.
With each of these, did you say outputs?
Yes.
Are they the same amount of Bitcoin, or does it depend on like the transaction that they're set up with initially as how much you unlock it?
Okay, yeah. I've simplified this a lot, basically. But when you make a transaction, say you're asking the question, so like say I didn't want to send 8 bitcoins to someone else, I want to send them less. What the transaction would look like, I've simplified this a lot, but you have another output. And so you'd say I want to send 2 to this person, I put 2 in here and I create another output with 6 in it. And then on the lock, I'll put one of my own keys on it. So you take care of your own change. So you can send any amount of Bitcoin you want, really.
But then if they are on the actual blockchain, if you don't have the keys, you can't control them, that's right.
Yes. Yep.
That makes sense.
So, yeah. So the locks control, it's like I said, a big room of safe deposit boxes.
So effectively, if you lose the keys, you can't
Yes.
control it.
Yeah, so if you, like you said, lose your keys and then that's it. There's no one you can call or ring to ask for your money back because it's gone then. You're in charge of your own security. Which is good and bad. It's like a double-edged sword. So, any more questions with that? Okay, so far? This is about as technical as it gets, I think, if I remember correctly. I think this is the last part now, the starting bit. So where do these keys come from? So when you use a wallet, you see all these addresses, where are those addresses actually coming from? Well, when you create a wallet for the first time or download one and start running it, it'll give you this thing called a seed. And this is just like usually 12 to 24 words, and they're all taken from a set number of words, and these are randomly generated. And so this is like this is a random set of 12 to 24 words that no one in the world will have. I know it doesn't look like much, but I can promise you, when you see that seed, no one else has seen that seed before, and no one else will generate that seed either. Anyway, so this seed is like the source of all your keys. So that seed there will generate this, generate you pairs of private keys and addresses. So there's one, another one, like so on and so on and so on. And I can do this forever. So a seed is, like I said, it's the source of every single private key and address in your wallet. So that's very important. So I'll cover this in the security section at the end, but when you get this seed, you want to write it down and keep it secure, because if you ever lost, because I could throw this phone out the window, I won't, but if I did, I could lose my wallet and stuff, but as long as I got my seed somewhere secure, I can always just get a new phone or download another wallet, import my seed into it and get my Bitcoins back. So the seed is the source of all your keys and addresses. And so key thing is here, don't show anyone your seed, never type it into a website, keep it as secure as possible. The security is on you for your Bitcoins with this. Any questions with that? Yes?
Does that mean that all the Bitcoin wallets are using the same hash algorithm to avoid kind of collisions with different algorithms, or is there literally going to be that many combinations that you have to worry about that?
Yeah, well, as in, yeah, no, they'll probably use the same one because there's so many different combinations of digests from the hash that it doesn't matter. You can use. Does that make sense?
If the seed can be guaranteed to sort of restore these hashes here,
yep.
Then I guess it means that you have to have the same algorithm to generate.
That's deterministic, yeah. From the words, you always get the same address as clears, yeah. That's deterministic. I guess that's what he's asking.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I think so. There's like a what's it called? Standard for these seeds. So different wallets will give you this like 12, 24 seed words, but each wallet should be able to generate the same addresses in the same way because it's like a standard for how they're generated.
Okay.
I think Electrum actually does them a little bit differently. There's a standard called like BIP39 where they all where the seeds have to be generated in the same way, so you don't have to worry. But what I would recommend though is when you write down your seed, write down which wallet it came from, just in case. But in general, for the most part, you can put any seed into any wallet and they should be able to give you the same keys. Okay, doing a quick demo. I thought we were going to do demos through this. So, like I said, I like one called Electrum. So I'll create a new wallet, call it Wallet 1. Yep, standard wallet. These are for, I'm not going to cover them now. So create a new seed. So like I said, if you had a seed and you lost your wallet, you could say, I already have a seed to recover your Bitcoins. And then create a new seed. You have a choice here between SegWit and Legacy. That's not very user-friendly, because like, if you don't know much about Bitcoin, what does that mean? It basically means like they've got new different types of addresses. I would go for SegWit, don't be afraid of it. It's like an upgrade to the way addresses work, so go for SegWit. But either's fine. Like I said, you can create lots of different wallets, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, but go for SegWit, it's fine. So now it's creating, there you are. So here it's giving me a seed, and then I would write that down on paper. So like I said, nobody has ever seen this set of 12 words before in the world, whoever will again. That's how random it is, and how many words I have to choose from. So that now would be the source of all my Bitcoins. So that's how you set up a wallet. And then once you've done that, it'll probably ask you to type it in again, manually, so that you make sure you've got the right seed, so you don't get it wrong. And then after you've done that, you will end up, okay, that's, okay, so after you've done that, you'll have, you'll have your own wallet ready to go to start receiving Bitcoins. So that's how you set up a wallet. It's very simple. Obviously, it depends on what wallet you're using, but they probably should feel about the same sort of way. Just set up, store your seed, and that's it. But I think everyone's probably done that in here. So, anyway, any questions with that? No. Okay. So that's setting up a wallet. Alright, so that's starting done. So that's how you set up a wallet. Next stop, buying. I get the impression that everyone here is probably familiar with buying before, but I'll run through it anyway. So here's me, just got my computer, downloaded a wallet, I'm ready to go, ready to start receiving Bitcoins. I got my addresses, I'm ready to get my own Bitcoins. How can you get them? Well, just go to someone else who's got Bitcoin, give them some money, give them your address, and then they'll create a transaction, send it into the Bitcoin network, and then you'll receive your Bitcoins. So get them from someone else who's got them. But what if you don't know anyone who's got Bitcoins? Obviously, not everyone knows everyone who owns them. We have companies now that sell Bitcoins. They have stashes of Bitcoin, they'll sell them to you, like companies, just for buying Bitcoins from them. So you'll go on their website, you'll create an account, and then you'll send them money, and then they'll add Bitcoins to your account. And that's how you can buy Bitcoins. That's the simpler way to do it. Problem with this, though, is if you've signed up to their website, to this company, and bought Bitcoins, and you've got Bitcoins sitting in your account, they're not technically your Bitcoins yet. They're saying you've got Bitcoins, but they're not. You don't really physically own them. It's like going to a website and buying gold, and having a certificate on the website saying you own some gold, but not actually having the gold yourself. So if this company was to go under, or disappear, or its servers were to blow up and lost all the private keys, then they would lose your Bitcoin too. But then it was never yours in the first place. So there's a big phrase going on in Bitcoin that's quite popular. That's not your keys, not your Bitcoin. So if you've got the keys to your Bitcoin, you know, the addresses and the private keys, then they are yours. They're your responsibility and they belong to you, and no one can take them away from you or lose them for you. So, I mean, this is fine. If you only care about Bitcoin from an investment perspective, then maybe holding them on an exchange might be better for you. But if you are interested in using Bitcoin and what it's about, then I would suggest withdrawing the Bitcoins to your own wallet, because in that way they'll belong to you then, and they are in your possession. So again, same diagram. When you click withdraw, they'll create a transaction for you. They'll send that transaction into the network, and then those Bitcoins will now belong to you in your wallet. Or basically, they've created an output with your private key address on it. As an aside, if you're looking to buy Bitcoins from a company, there's a bit of a privacy issue because they're sort of like an on-ramp to, it's like a different sort of financial system really, because we have pounds, euros and dollars, and they're sort of controlled by banks and governments, so they have eyes on everything and they can control it all. But in Bitcoin, it's like a completely different system that they don't have control over. So this is like an on-ramp into a different system. So at these on-ramps, if you're having a company that's selling Bitcoins to people, they like to have some sort of know your customer and anti-money.
By company, you mean exchange? Or?
Like Coinbase.
Yeah.
So like an exchange. Yeah, sorry. So they'll have some regulations they have to follow, and so you'll probably have to give them your ID, which might seem pretty harmless, probably is harmless in a way. But what that means is when you withdraw those Bitcoins to your wallet, those Bitcoins with your address on it, they'll know that you've withdrawn to that address, and so those Bitcoins will be linked to your ID, which kind of really isn't in the spirit of Bitcoin. Bitcoin, I feel, is more like a sort of freedom sort of money, whereas banks are more sort of surveillance and seeing what you do and permission, whereas Bitcoin's trying to get away from that. So if you were to take those Bitcoins and spend them at the shop that you didn't want anyone to know about that you spent them at that shop, I wouldn't spend the Bitcoins you've got from a company like Coinbase to that shop, or for example. If that shop was to get raided and the address or their addresses were taken, you could just look in the blockchain and see that there's a connection from your address with your ID to this shop here, because every single transaction you make is connected. So if your address is connected to your ID and you send it to a shop there, you're at risk of losing privacy. That's an aside. So basically, if you're buying from individuals and people, you have sort of privacy there. But with companies, you have to give them the ID, there's less privacy. So it's sort of like a scale of when you buy in Bitcoins, be aware of your own privacy. So popular companies you can buy Bitcoin from. Coinbase is probably by far the biggest one and probably most recommended. If you're going to buy Bitcoin and want to go to a company that's simple and reliable, I would say Coinbase. There's also one called Binance Jersey. This seems quite popular as well. But there's loads of places you can buy Bitcoin from. This is just a small fraction. But these are probably the two biggest or most reputable if I had to recommend two.
Yeah, with that.
I've not used either though. So it's hard for me to recommend them, but I know that people do use them and they are widely recommended. So, but yeah, what I've always used in the past, I thought was really cool, is a place called Local Bitcoins, where they have a website. You can create a website, and instead of buying Bitcoins directly from them, and they send you Bitcoins, you have to give them ID. They would just sort of pair you up with other people who've signed up to the website. There's sort of like a middleman that pays you with other people, so you can send like bank transfers to those people, and then they'll send the Bitcoins to the website and they'll come back to you. So you're not buying directly from Local Bitcoins, it's just like a marketplace where it pairs up buyers and sellers. So that's pretty cool. Recently though, they've changed, so they require ID now. So it's kind of lost that indie feel to it. It's become a bit more, corporate. I think it had to though because it's so popular. But so they're more towards this less privacy side now. But I don't think they're as bad as, say, Coinbase and places like Binance. They're very sort of corporate and whatnot. Local Bitcoin has always tried to be more, well, I don't know, I'm just guessing, but it always felt like quite indie and cool. And they're a Finnish company, and I never had a problem with them. So, so they're sort of in the middle now. If you want super privacy, there are two places I know of. One's called Bisq and one's called Hodl Hodl. I've only used Hodl Hodl, not used Bisq yet. But they do what Local Bitcoins used to do. They pay you with other people, but they don't require ID. So there are two options as well. But what I would say is though, these are far more tricky to use. They're not as easy as buying from Coinbase. And there's less people on there, so the prices tend to be higher. So I don't know how they're going to go for the future, but it's nice that we have this option still. But I feel like buying Bitcoins has gradually moved towards this less private way of buying them, but there are still options for buying them more privately. But ultimately, I think though the best way to buy Bitcoins would be to buy from other people directly. So that's why I think meetups are good, to be able to find people buying and selling, because that's most private and best way to do it in my opinion. But it's always not most convenient. So that's buying. Does anyone have any thoughts on where to buy Bitcoins from? Because I don't really know a lot. Yes, go on.
Yeah, so if you buy one from like Coinbase, could you use like a Mixer wallet?
Yeah.
To be able to
Yeah.
respect your privacy a bit more, so then it won't necessarily be linked
Yes.
to your private one.
Yeah, that would be a way of doing it. Yeah, I don't know if anyone knows about mixers. I'm not going to go into that. But you could buy some Bitcoins, and like I said, how the transactions are connected. You could get you can use like a tool that would send them through like a series of transactions or combine and split them multiple times, so it's not obvious where the payments are coming from, where they're going to.
Is there a difference, between not obvious? I mean, does it matter if it's not obvious? Is it traceable or not? That sort of question. I mean, if they're interested in finding out, they'll find out whether it's obvious or otherwise.
I think the way they mix them, I think it's designed to be close to impossible to tracing them. But I don't know if they're perfect. That's the thing. I've not used them, the mixers myself. I don't know if they're perfect. They could have some leftover traces of not making it perfect, anonymous mixing. But like I said, I haven't used them, so I don't know. Good question. I'll have to come back to that. No. Yeah. But I think if you were to mix them in such a way that made it so difficult to trace them,
Because
I think
you're not a millionaire, then it's probably not worth their time to be able to actually.
Yeah, because it'd
they
be.
are very good.
Yeah, the amount of effort it would take, and I don't think governments are that great at the moment. There are companies that do crime analysis for trying to trace transactions and stuff, but I don't think governments are great at it at the moment, and I think they're very behind on tracing the movement of coins. But the problem with the blockchain is that once you've made a transaction on the blockchain, it's there forever. So while you might be secure at the moment.
Yeah, the technology will advance.
Yes. So yeah, I don't really know enough about the mixing to be able to speak about it enough. But there are options there. I think Wasabi and Samurai, they're the two popular ones.
Drone market.
Yeah. So, I'm obviously out of my depth here, I think, on this one.
They take various different approaches to the mixing backend,
Yeah.
which leave different levels of tracing, of which these coin analysis companies are picking up on now. So there's been a couple of cases, one today actually from Paxos Exchange, which is they're starting to flag transactions that are coming in from previously used. Wasabi's the big one at the moment because as part of that process, their coin join process,
Yeah.
they use a same. One of the output addresses that they use as part of the process is the same regardless of who's using it,
Yeah.
which means that that's really easy to flag.
So I'd identify, and so like you know if
Yeah.
you're mixing. Yeah.
So
yeah, I saw-
Wonderful is
yeah.
improving on that.
Yeah.
And I don't know much about people actually. Shall we run?
Yeah, we can talk about it after.
Yeah.
If you want.
So this is
But I do want to add something here.
Yeah.
So I think it's important on BISC because they don't have a reputation system. If you want to trade with someone, if you want to start buying Bitcoin on BISC, you have to have some Bitcoin yourself to deposit. That's how they make sure you don't
okay.
fool each other over. That's
Okay.
I think a nice caveat.
This is a much more technical audience than
Like to ask how trustworthy is it using those sort of networks? But like you say, you've got to deposit up front and that pretty much.
It's not as hard as you may think. You just have to know that's a thing. But it's pretty easy, you know. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it to a complete beginner, but this is obviously
Yeah.
quite a savvy audience. So it's much more technical than I expected. So, but yeah. Anyway, so that's how you buy Bitcoin. But I think everyone's probably bought here. But if you're new to Bitcoin, I would recommend Coinbase or Binance. It's the best way to get started. I wouldn't risk any of this just yet. Yeah, so that's buying. Sending. I'm just gonna make a transaction now. Another one. So let's say you found like a really cool website that you want to donate to, and they have a Bitcoin address on it, or any service like Namecheap. They take payments for domains. Scan.co.uk. There's a few digital places. Not a lot of people take Bitcoin, but whatever. Let's say you found somewhere you want to donate to. All you need is their address. So there we are. I got the address. Go into my wallet, and then go into send. Enter the address. Description. Doesn't matter. You can leave that blank, and then the amount. So let's say you want to send about possibly what's that, roughly a beer's worth of Bitcoin, and that's all you need to do. Most wallets then will give you the option of setting a fee on your transaction. I'll cover this in a moment, but this gives miners an incentive. So basically the higher the fee, the more likely it is to be mined onto the blockchain more quickly. I think everyone knows this. But I don't really care about this being mined, so I'll set a low fee on it so it has a low priority for miners to include it in a block. So I'll just send this now. So yeah, so that's given me a transaction ID, and then that has been sent. So that's been sent to me. What you can do then, that's gone basically. It'll show me on here that it's been sent. But if you want to explore it or find out more about that transaction, you can view it on a blockchain explorer. So I think the best one at the moment now is blockstream.info. It looks a bit technical though, that's the only problem. So I can see that now this transaction has made it into the network, and this blockchain explorer is showing me a view into one of the blockchains, and I can see here that it's currently unconfirmed. So it's not been made final yet. So that's just how you can make a transaction and view it. Or there's one website here, there it is. This is one I've made that shows a bit more detail, but it's a bit more visual about the movement of the Bitcoins. So like here, you can see that it's taken some outputs and created 2 new outputs, and it's got the address there. So it's created a batch of Bitcoins there with the address on it that's being sent to. So this sort of like a visualization of movement of the coins. So that's how you make a transaction. I think everyone's sort of familiar with that. No? Okay, any questions with that? Or,
Well, yeah, coming to the room when you had to spell Bitcoin.
what? Sorry?
Yeah, I know nothing.
Oh, sorry. I'm very sorry. Yeah. Does that make sense? I know I went very fast then. Does everything sort of... Any questions about how I did that then, making the transaction?
Oh, I mean, using an application to enter some data and do that
Yes.
is fine.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Okay, all right, thanks. So that's how simple it is to make a transaction. What I'll do now, I'll just explain what actually happened there, what's actually really going on underneath, inside the blockchain. So this is me on my computer. I entered an address and an amount of Bitcoins. What my wallet did then is it went into the blockchain, found some bitcoins that I own, created a new batch of bitcoins, put the address I want to send the bitcoins to into the lock, and then unlock the bitcoins that I own, and that's the transaction. Then I click send, and what I did then is send that transaction into a node on the network, and then that transaction spread across the network, and so it's on every computer on the network now. And that's currently sitting on like thousands of computers over the world, all over the world. But what happens is when I sent the transaction into a node, it doesn't go straight into the blockchain. This is like permanent storage for transactions. What happened, it went into this place, like temporary holding area called the memory pool. And so that transaction, when it gets sent around the network, it gets stored in the memory pools of all these nodes. But ultimately, for this transaction I just made to be final and irreversible, it needs to get mined into the blockchain. Well, get added onto the blockchain. So how does that happen? Well, each of these nodes on the network have the option of constructing a new block of transactions, a new block containing transactions from their memory pool. And so these nodes are called miners. So these miners, what they do, they go into their memory pool, create a block of transactions and try and add it onto the blockchain. That's what they're trying to do. And this takes processing power. And the cool thing about mining is that no single miner is in control of the next block that gets added onto the blockchain. And anyone can mine. So if you wanted to, you could set up your own node and start mining blocks of transactions. But it does take a lot of processing power and energy to do so. And then after about 10 minutes, on average, one of these nodes, or one of these miners on the network, will be able to mine their block onto the blockchain. People say it's like solving a puzzle, and I suppose that's probably the simplest way to describe it. But if you're a bit more technically inclined, it's basically hashing the block until you get a hash result that starts with a certain number of zeros. From there, that node will send the block to all the nodes it's connected to, and they'll add it to their blockchain, they'll verify it, make sure it's been mined correctly. They'll add it to their blockchain, like so, and like that. And so now everyone now has a copy of the latest block with your transaction in their blockchains, and that transaction is now permanent. It can't be undone. And that's because of the mining process, because it takes energy to get a new block of transactions onto the blockchain. It can't be forged either. I'm not going to really cover how that works, because that's a different topic of blockchain technology, but that is what the key point of how Bitcoin works and what makes it interesting. That is the key invention of Bitcoin as well. And this whole mining process basically prevents any individual node from controlling the transactions that get written to the file, and also prevents any individual from rewriting the file as well. And also sorts out conflicting transactions. But again, that's a different talk altogether. So basically, when you make a transaction, if it's in the memory pool, it's temporary, it's not complete yet. You haven't received those bitcoins and they've not gone to that person yet, but they're waiting to do so. But when it goes into the blockchain, then you can think of it as being permanent, mostly. I'll cover that in a minute. Also, like I said, the memory pool is temporary waiting area. So if you make a transaction and it doesn't get mined into the blockchain, if it stays in the memory pool for longer than 72 hours, 3 days, it'll end up getting kicked out and it'll never end up getting mined into the blockchain. So you'll have to resend that transaction again. So next question is, so why would that happen? If you make a transaction and it gets stuck in the memory pool, why won't it get mined? Well, basically, these blocks that miners create to add onto the blockchain, they can only hold so much data inside them, about 1 megabyte worth of data, because every transaction you make is just a bunch of data describing the movement from one address to another. So if a lot of people are making transactions around the world, then this memory pool can be quite large. It can fill up quite a lot. It can hold about 300 megabytes worth, but depends on, you can set your node to choose how much. But basically, the memory pool can be a lot bigger than the blocks being added onto the blockchain every 10 minutes. So what a miner will do when they construct this candidate block, this block they want to mine, they go into the memory pool and they'll choose the transactions with the highest fees. Because when you make a transaction, you can set a fee on it, and that is the incentive for the miner to include your transaction into their candidate block. So what I did here, you might go onto your wallet, you'll see that you have the option of setting a fee on it. It'll probably give you an estimate of how many blocks it'll take before it gets mined. So if you set a really low fee on it like I did, it's basically at the back of the queue in terms of what a miner wants to add into their block. You increase the fee, it goes ahead towards the top of the queue like so. So the fee basically gives an incentive for a miner to include your transaction in a more recent block. Does that make sense so far? So if you set a really low fee on it like I just did just then, I don't care about getting mine, to be honest. I just made the transaction to show you how a transaction works. So I can see it was in the memory pool, but I don't really care about becoming permanent. So because it's the back of the queue, I've got to wait for all these other transactions. Imagine more blocks could be mined, but eventually, if the memory pool goes down in size because more blocks are being mined and not many people are using Bitcoin, it'll get included in a candidate block and then eventually get mined onto the blockchain like so and become permanent, like that. Does that make sense so far with fees and stuff? Be careful not to pay too much on fees. I'll show an Explorer in a minute, it's quite cool, but it all depends on demand. If a lot of people are using Bitcoin, the fees will be more because more people are adding more fees to try and get the transactions mined more quickly. At the moment, Bitcoin's kind of calm, not a lot of people are using it, so you can set really quite low fees on it and that'll get mined. But when the price of Bitcoin goes up quite a lot, there's a lot of people making transactions and so the fees go quite high during that time. Yes?
So if you were to send Bitcoin to someone in payment for something, say, at a time that the network was really busy and the memory pools were really high, is there more of a risk then that the transaction wouldn't make its way onto the blockchain, sometime after, maybe you receive goods and you can necessarily actually transfer Bitcoins to the
Yes, exactly. So if you were selling something for Bitcoin and it was worth something, I wouldn't post it until it's been mined onto the blockchain.
Right.
Because it could end up not getting mined at all and the Bitcoins will never make their way to you. But you would have. A transaction will stay in the memory pool for 3 days, 72 hours.
So you might not have the transaction confirmed for 3 days.
Yes, yes. I think there are things you can use to increase the fee on a transaction.
That's increasing your cost, is that right?
Yes.
Literally. Okay.
Yeah. So the fee is just, like I said, the incentive to be included into a block. So.
But there's still no guarantee it will happen, no matter how high
No,
the fee.
no. But miners, I suppose they work on greed. They want to make the most money they can, so they're always going to choose the transaction. Because they're paying so much money in electricity cost to mine blocks, it makes sense for them to include transactions with the highest fees on them. But they don't have to, I suppose. So I suppose you're trusting the miners to be greedy. Okay. All right. Lastly, how many confirmations should you wait for? So you might have heard the term confirmations, you probably have. But when your transaction does get mined into a block, that's called having one confirmation. Then when another block gets mined on top of it, that's 2 confirmations, and so on and so on and so on. And so the further your transaction goes into the blockchain, the more confirmations it has. Why are these important? Because when I said that when a transaction gets mined into the blockchain it's permanent, kind of is, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's true. The way blockchain works, the way blockchain works is all nodes will always accept the longest chain of blocks that have been mined. So a bad miner could come along and say your transaction was mined into this block here, and everyone's on board using the same version of the blockchain. If a bad miner comes along and builds a blockchain that's longer, and they send that to all the other nodes, they can replace the blocks that everyone thinks agrees upon as being the correct version of the blockchain. But that's very difficult. If a miner has more than 50% of the mining power across the whole network, they can do that at any time. And that's called a 51% attack, and that's bad for Bitcoin. It's never happened in Bitcoin, but even with less than 50% of the mining power, even if I say 20%, there's a chance that you could still get lucky and create a bunch of blocks, outmine the rest of the network to mine a bunch of blocks and replace the blocks in the blockchain. Again, that's never happened in Bitcoin, but it could, and it's possible. People usually say to wait for 6 confirmations before you really trust you have those Bitcoins. I think that's overkill, because like I said, no one has ever actually sort of done an attack like that to rewrite blocks in the blockchain. It takes a lot of energy, and you'd be doing a disservice to yourself and to Bitcoin by doing it. You'd probably crash the price. But like I said, it's never happened before. So if you make a transaction, you're waiting for 6 confirmations. You're protecting yourself against like a sort of a network scale attack from someone trying to rewrite the blockchain to undo your transaction. Like I said, it's never happened before. But if you wanted to be extra secure, then you can wait for 6. What I would say, if it's one confirmation, if it's been confirmed in the blockchain, for me, like that is pretty much done and dusted. I trust that it's going to be fine. I don't really worry about it at all. If you want to do a bit of extra security, wait for 2, because naturally, without doing an actual network scale attack to rewrite the blockchain, the top block of the blockchain can sometimes switch. If 2 blocks get mined at the same time, they can be a bit of a switch. But I've never seen it happen with 2 blocks being mined consecutively at the same time, to having that to switch. So I would say 2 confirmations to be sure. So yes. I've never experienced it or ever seen it where I've made a transaction and it's been had one confirmation and then ended up getting removed from the blockchain. Even if it did get removed from the blockchain, because 2 blocks get mined at the same time, the transaction would actually get recycled back into the memory pool for the chance of being mined again. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be mined again. But that can happen, but I said I've never seen it happen. I think it's about 1 in...
It happened like 2 days ago.
Oh, did it? Okay, yeah. Classic.
I think it's about once every 2 weeks you get a single block.
Yeah.
And then I think it's probabilistically it's 1 in 10 years for 2.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so a bit, yeah, like I said, once every 2 weeks, that sort of 2 blocks get mined at the same time, and so one could either become the actual one that becomes part of the blockchain. But I've never experienced it. It's like very unlikely, but it can happen. So, like I said, 1 instance every 10 years for 2 blocks to get shifted out. So if my transaction is 2 confirmations, I don't ever see it being taken out of the blockchain. And if it did, it was because the attack was made on Bitcoin, and Bitcoin sort of lost its integrity a bit there as well. So I think Bitcoin will have bigger problems than my payment getting undone. Anyway, that was a bit more technical than I planned to go into, but that's sort of like blockchain technology and probabilities. Might be interesting. On the website, I've got a page on, it's called a chain reorganization. So there we are, 2 days ago, there was one at that height, so 2 blocks got mined. But as you can see, they're all just 1 length long, 1 block deep. That's just a bit more technical. Anyway, so that's chain reorganizations. Right, I'm going to check that transaction now. So that was here's the transaction ID. When you make a transaction, you get given a transaction ID, which is like a unique reference number for that transaction. It's like making sending a parcel in the post. So the post office giving you a reference number, so you can track it, see where it is, what it's doing. So if I take this transaction ID, I can go into a block explorer like I did earlier and check see what it's doing. And I can see now that transaction is actually being mined into a block. If I go into this explorer, it was unconfirmed before. If I refresh the page, you can see it's got 1 confirmation. So if you look at the blockchain, there it is, it's in this block here. So my transaction has just been mined into the latest block, which was 7 minutes ago, and now that is probably never going to be taken out of the blockchain, and it's there forever across thousands of computers on the world. So that's my payment done. That 7p or however much it was is never going to be taken away from me. Any questions with that? Okay, yeah.
Is there a limit to the size of an output? What's the largest single output you can have in a block?
What, this in Bitcoins?
So in terms of the locked, did I get the right word, output?
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of how many Bitcoins in any one output?
I think, how many bytes is it? It's like 4 bytes, whatever that is.
In the like number of Bitcoins.
Yes, I wonder if
you can only have 21 million if you...
Wow, okay. however many.
Yeah, there's no limit. I think it's the size of it's a very yeah.
So if it ever did diverge and there was a need to resolve, it could be a transaction of a massive size.
Yes, yeah. So basically, so if you made a huge transaction, so if you're making a small payment, no one's going to rewrite the blockchain to try and take your money away. But if you made a few billions of pounds in one transaction, then someone might have an incentive to attack the network to undo that transaction. But there's a big exchange, Binance, that got hacked, and they lost. I don't know how much they lost, and they were considering trying to reorganize the chain to undo the transaction, but they realized it was unfeasible to do so, and it would ruin the integrity of Bitcoin in the process. So Bitcoin's very secure, basically. But yeah, you can send as much Bitcoin as you want. There's no limit on how much Bitcoin you send in one output. But Bitcoins also can be broken down into 8 decimal places, which is 1 Satoshi, and so they're worth about 100 millionth. So small. So yes, they're very, very small. So which is much less than a penny at the moment. I think if Bitcoin went to £100,000, then 1 Satoshi would be 1 penny, or how much it is, but it's not there yet.
It's about 10,000 sats for the dollar currently.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, maths is not working. Yeah.
Sorry, so sat for the dollar.
Oh.
So the smallest denomination of Bitcoin is 1 Satoshi.
Yeah.
So 1
Satoshi, that's a sat.
Yeah. So sorry. So
Yeah, I'll just show you. I don't know if I can show you on here, but this is in Bitcoins. But 1 Satoshi would be that many. So Bitcoins can be broken down quite a lot. I think over time, one of the worst things about the adoption of Bitcoin, I think, is the fact that you have 1 Bitcoin and people thought in terms of 1 Bitcoin, which is now worth £7,000, something like that. So it seems like unattainable, but I think there's a movement now to using Satoshis or Sats as the main denomination, which I think is more user-friendly. They're called Sats after Satoshi, the guy who invented, or person, sorry, it could be male or female, we don't know. Their pseudonym, they're anonymous, was Satoshi Nakamoto, so the smallest unit of Bitcoin is named after them, Sats. Check the transaction. Lastly, last part now, securing. I'm sure some of you might have used these before. But first of all, there's 2 parts I'm going to cover here about keeping your Bitcoin secure. First of all, the seed. When you get that is, like I said, just a source of all your keys and the control of your Bitcoin, so don't lose it. So you want to keep that safe. So you might think, I'll store that on a file on my computer, or I'll upload it to the cloud, whatever, or something, or take a screenshot of it. Don't do any of those things. That'd be a very bad idea. Sure, it would store your seed securely, but if you were to keep them on a file unencrypted, then you're leaving them open to being stolen. It's like walking through Sheffield City Centre with a £10 note hanging out your back pocket, waiting for it to be stolen. They're not protected, and this is a common way for people to lose their Bitcoins. I had a friend who took a screenshot of his seed that his mobile wallet gave him, and he thought that was a safe way to do it, and I think he did upload it to the cloud as well for extra security. To him, that was secure, and it makes sense. I've got my seed, but somehow it was stolen. So either the people who run the cloud storage service saw his unencrypted seed and stole them that way, or his friend saw his screenshot and stole them that way. So basically, don't store them digitally. That's the key thing. You write them down. Yeah, keep it offline, off the internet. That's the best way to do it. If you were going to store them digitally, store them encrypted, but that still has some risks. But the safest way to do it would be to write it down on paper. And as a quick tip, like I mentioned earlier, most seeds, or the majority of seeds, create the private keys and addresses in the same way, but I'm not sure if that will always be the same. So just to have extra peace of mind, just write down what wallet you used to get those Bitcoins from and the date. So if you downloaded a wallet and you got a seed, and you came back 10 years later, you'll know how to recover those Bitcoins. Does that make sense? There we are. What you can do, there are some options available now. If you write on paper, obviously paper can catch fire and get wet, and you can throw it in the bin because you don't know what it is. So a cool thing you get is like one of these things. It's just like a little steel block that you can enter your seed onto. My seed is not here, so. But this, you can use this as just a better version of paper to store your seed. It won't catch fire. You probably just like to throw it away. So this is an option. I think they cost about like 50, 60 quid. I can't remember what it should cost. But this is called a crypto steel. It's on the paper here if you're interested. There's a way of storing your seed securely. I like this version. This is quite easy to use. I'll pass it around in a minute if you want. I don't know. There is this.
Quite heavy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think they've really done a good job of stress testing them to make sure they're secure. There's another one called the capsule. It's a bit more fiddly. You just sort of put each individual letter on here of the seed to store it, and then that's another way of storing it, keeping it secure. If you do get one of these, note that it'll only give the option of putting the first 4 letters of your seed inside the steel blob, and that's because every single possible word you can get, it comes from a pool of words, and every 4 letters will provide a unique word. So don't worry that you're going to have 4 letters and you don't know which word it is. Do you want to pass that around as well? That's it. Oh, unscrew it, yeah. Yeah, but when it comes to your storage of your seed, that's up to you. I can't advise you on that. You know your security better than anyone else, and what's secure for you won't be secure for anyone else, so just be careful. At the end of the day though, don't lose your seed and don't let anyone see it. That's the trick. And don't put it on your computer. That's seed storage. Next part of keeping your Bitcoin secure is something called cold storage. So let's say you've got your wallet like I have on your computer, and that's connected to the internet. This cloud here represents the internet. So when you're using your computer, you got your wallet on it. You're sending data out into the internet, to websites, downloading programs, getting information back from websites. Using it all the time. There's a chance that in your day-to-day usage of your computer, you'll download like a virus or some malware. So if you did download a virus unknowingly, what could happen is when you're typing in your password to your wallet to decrypt it, the malware could be like a key logger, so it logs your keys as you enter in your password, and then it'll send your password out to itself. And then if it can do that, if it also gets a hold of your encrypted wallet file, it could send that out as well if you've got a virus. And so that's basically your private keys and your Bitcoin's gone. So I've not experienced this, but it can happen. Similarly, another attack the virus could do, when you sign a transaction, your wallet will actually keep all your private keys encrypted on your laptop to keep them secure. But when you actually send a transaction, I had to enter my password then, so I could unencrypt it to get the private key, so I could unlock the transaction when I'm signing it. So when that file is unencrypted and the private key is in memory, it could get taken then as well. But there's a couple of ways that malware could nick your Bitcoins if you're using a wallet on an internet-connected computer. Like I said, I've never experienced it, but it's something to be cautious about. So if you're downloading programs willy-nilly, then you're susceptible to downloading a virus that could steal the Bitcoins. So this is what people call a hot wallet. It's a wallet on your computer that's connected to the internet that you're using day to day. So that's fine, it's convenient, but you are at a bit of a risk. So if you really wanted to protect yourself from this from these viruses, what could you do? Well, back in the day, when I first got into Bitcoin, this was a popular way of keeping yourself secure. And a good way to illustrate what's actually going on is you would get like a spare laptop. You would install like a new operating system on it, like Linux or something like that. And you would install a wallet on that offline computer. So you'd probably get the program on a USB stick, install it into your offline computer, so it's never touch the internet. And that would be your Bitcoin wallet on that computer. So you'd have all your private, you put all your addresses on there and all your private keys on this offline computer. They've never been exposed to the internet. What you do then is you take those public keys from that offline computer and you would insert them into an into a computer like this that's online, connected to the internet. So you've got the public keys on this internet connected computer, but the private key is offline. So this would be called a watch-only wallet. So then, because you've got the public keys on this computer, you can receive the Bitcoins. You've got your addresses on there. You can send them out to other people to receive Bitcoins, and that'll show you how many Bitcoins you've got. So that's handy. But when it comes to wanting to send those Bitcoins onto someone else, you've got a bit of a problem because those private keys that you need to send them are on the offline computer. So when you try to make a transaction from this watch-only wallet, you can create the transaction, but it can't unlock the Bitcoins because you need the private key. So what you would do, you get a USB stick again, you've created that transaction, put it on that USB stick, take it to your other computer, insert that transaction into the wallet, ask it to sign it for you, which it will. Then you'll take the transaction, then when it's been signed, take it back to the online computer and then send it into the network. So that works, and that means your private keys, like I said, have never touched the internet, and it's a more secure way of doing it, but obviously a bit cumbersome. But that's when I first started using Bitcoin. That was a recommended way to do to keep your Bitcoin secure. But for the average person, that's just a bit hard work and not practical. So is there an easier way? Yes. So we have things now called hardware wallets, and they just basically do this process of keeping your keys offline and signing transactions, and without the hard work of using a USB stick. So this is an example. So instead of having a whole laptop, you can just have like a little device like this called a hardware wallet, and it'll do the exact same thing. Transactions be made on here, it'll get sent to here, this will sign it, it'll send it back, and this will never be compromised because it's like a little mini computer that actually never connects to the internet and only does one thing, and it has built-in security. So what you would do, you'd plug that into your computer, it'll show you your addresses, you can receive Bitcoins. When you want to send Bitcoins, you'll do the same thing again. The wallet will create the transaction, it'll send it into the device for it to be signed, and then it'll send it back, and then it'll send it out into the network. So this is just like a little mini offline computer for your private keys. Interestingly, if you had a computer that was like riddled with viruses and malware, you could still insert it in. It should be fine, because it's not like a operating system. Well, it's just I don't really know enough, but it can't have viruses on it. It's not going to accept viruses because it only does one thing well. It's not like an all-purpose operating system. So if you did connect this to someone else's computer and you weren't sure about it, you'd probably be fine, because your private keys always stay on here and the viruses can't get in. That wasn't very technical at all, but yeah, go on.
Hardware wallets kind of user updatable new seeds.
Sorry?
Hardware wallets updatable with new seeds or new addresses or private keys, or like if you bought one of those and you then wanted to change what set of Bitcoin wallets you were using and what passwords, could you do that?
Yeah, so it'll give you a seed just like a normal wallet when you use it for the first time.
Okay.
And then you could, if you wanted to, you could take the seed from there and then import it into like an Electrum and use the hot wallet computer and then wipe this and get a new seed from it.
So you can get new seeds per physical
Yes. Device? Yep. This generates the seeds for you randomly.
Oh, yeah.
So you don't get, so if you've ever got a seed through the post, that'd be horrendous, because anyone could have seen it. So it's all about security and no one else seeing your seed, really. So this will generate the seeds randomly for you. That's one of the things it does.
That's one question. So if you were to take the seed off it, does the seed appear on the key itself, or does it communicate the seed across the USB?
It doesn't hold the seed. I think no. No, it's okay. I think this might answer your question. Right. So in cryptography, you have like private keys and public keys. When I created this transaction, I'm just describing the movement of where I want the Bitcoins to come from, which address they want to come from, and where they're going, and how much Bitcoin. There's no private keys inside this transaction. When I send the transaction to this device to sign it, it's using the private keys. I think it would contain the seed, actually. Yeah. It's using the private key inside here to sign the transaction. It's not actually putting the private key into the transaction. It's creating a signature from that private key. and then sending it back. So there's no private key actually in this transaction, but this device holds the seed. I think it must hold the seed. Yeah, it must hold the
seed
seed.
is probably just a representation.
Yeah. Yeah, because it needs that to generate new addresses, isn't it? So, yeah. Oh, sorry, I don't think I answered your question there. Was that?
Because
The seed never leaves the device.
Yeah.
the private key and the wallet address are linked, right?
Yes.
So it must know which wallet has been generated from the seed in order to have a private key that's applicable to it. So I'm wondering whether or not it would hold the private key details and the wallet details in order to match them.
Yeah, well, you can generate, when you have a private key, you can, yeah, so when, the way addresses work, to create an address, a private key is a random number, and then the address is created from that random number. So the seed is like the step back from that, so the seed creates all these private keys. So when the transaction comes through with this address on it, it'll know which private key to use to sign it. But the way cryptography works is when you have a private key and you create an address from it, anyone can see the address, but they can't figure out what the private key was. But the private key can create digital signatures that correspond to the address without ever actually revealing the private key. That's like, it's a bit more. Does that answer your question? I don't know if I answered your question at all there.
I suppose my thought was I thought you said that you could retrieve the seed from the wallet if you needed to at a later date. I'm just wondering if it's possible to retrieve it. So I'm just sort of wondering in terms of whether to use one of these devices or not.
Oh, but could you crack into it and get the seed out of it?
Could you ever retrieve the seed? And if you can you retrieve it via USB, or do you have to read it off a screen on the?
No, you won't be able to retrieve the seed or the private keys from here.
Right.
It's sort of like I've never built
When
one.
you get it, you'll see it for the first time. You'll see it still like present the seed to you, and then after that, you can't ever see it again.
Like if there was bitcoins on here now, and I left them in this room, and anyone was to take it, you won't be able to get the bitcoins out of it. And as long as you couldn't get past the pin, you couldn't sort of break into this to get the seed and the private keys from it.
Well, with the Trezor actually, that specific device has some vulnerabilities, so if you might want to get the other one there, the white box one.
Oh, the ledger.
But that's something else, yeah.
Okay.
I get the ledger.
Yeah. Well, I like Trezor, but well, if that's true, then yeah. But okay, I'm obviously not hot on hardware wallets, but I just wanted to describe how they work.
I think in response to that next question, there's like a master private key, and then like a master public key. So say on your seed, you have like then that would have like a private key and a public key associated with that, and then that's what's transferred over USB into the wallet, and then the wallet can use that to derive loads of other public keys from it. So it's kind of like the wallet. The wallet is generated without having access to the private key, sort of, or like on the computer rather than on the device.
But then it sounds like the seed wouldn't be able to do the same generation of, because you've got another step of generation from the way you were describing there. I think the seed wouldn't be transferable.
So what's the question again? Sorry,
I think the question is whether or not it's the seed that's responsible for generating first, like a master private key from which you generate a master wallet address and then generate other wallet addresses and private keys from that, or whether or not the seed is always just coming up with new wallets and addresses.
Yeah, okay, I think, as in, yeah, okay. Yeah, I think I need to learn more about that. I think that's like the hierarchical deterministic way it works. That's a good question. I have to move on, I think, but good question. So there we are. So last of all, which hardware wallets? There are quite a few of them. Well, it's about 3 or 4, I think. But the two major ones are Trezor and Ledger. So this one here is called a Trezor 1. The second, another one, it's called a Ledger. Looks a bit more like this, but they both work in a similar way. I personally prefer the Trezor. I just think, but they're both huge, big, well respected, and two most popular ones. So either way, you can go wrong with either of those. So I'll do a quick demo of using the hardware wallet. So what you'll have is like a web interface. So all the hard work, all the computation is done on here. This is just like a web interface to show you what's going on. I'm going to need that. Watch it not work now. Yeah, there we are. Right, so this device is pin protected. So this is basically the only thing that's protecting anyone from stealing Bitcoins from here. So make sure you choose a good pin. I haven't chosen a particularly good one, but it's quite simple to remember. So there we are. So here it's showing me all the transactions I've had. So if I want to receive some, it'll give me an address for receiving. It'll show on here, confirm the address that is showing on there, just in case you had a virus that was altering the address that's being shown on here. You can confirm that the actual address that the device is showing you is correct. And then for sending some, I'll just send some Bitcoins now back to, let's say, didn't really think this through. But anyway, so I say I want to receive some to a different wallet. I'll just take an address, or I can create, I'll just take this address, enter it in here. Again, the amount. Again, so this is just like another wallet interface similar to this. I can set the fee custom here. As you can see, it's showing me the different fee amounts and the expected how long it'll take for it to be confirmed. I'll put a really low fee on it, just 1 Satoshi per byte. Send. And so now this device is signing the transaction. It'll ask me to confirm it. And that's confirmed. And now that transaction has been sent. So now I can well, that went well. So now I know, having used this device, if I was to use this wallet here day to day, because it's on my computer, it's connected to the internet, I might be a bit nervous because I could get a virus. But using this, I know that's not going to get a virus on it, and I can send transactions using this, like that.
One thing I want to add on that as well is if your computer did get malware, would security software like McAfee or Norton security, for example, combat that?
Yeah, possibly, unless the malware is really good, I suppose. I don't know enough about viruses or malware to be able to speak about that, so but possibly, yeah.
Some will say it's a virus if you download the legitimate software. So.
Yeah. Right, okay, I think I'll carry on now. That was just a quick demo for anyone who hasn't used a hardware wallet before. But I would highly recommend them. What people tend to do is they have like a hot wallet for like the day-to-day spending on their phone or on the computer, and they use like a Trezor or Ledger for the storage of their Bitcoins for like safekeeping.
Because yeah, they're definitely worth, because they're not very expensive.
Oh yeah, I think they're about what, 50, 60, 70 quid, something like that?
The basic ones, 50, 60 quid.
Yeah.
So if you're spending anything on cryptocurrency, it's definitely worth getting on.
Yeah, highly recommended.
Yeah.
Extra tips for security. Keep your seed secure. Like I said, if anyone sees your seed, your Bitcoins are gone. Simplicity is better than complexity. So, in my opinion, I think you're better off getting a simple system with secure devices than, say, getting a seed and then splitting up into multiple pieces and breaking up and then encrypting them in different ways. The more complex I think you make your security, the more chance there is that instead of protecting your Bitcoins, there's more chance of you losing them or locking yourself out of them. So if you create a system that's simple but secure, I think that's the best way to go. Don't be paranoid with your seed, then don't lock yourself out. But it's up to you what you think is secure. But don't get too paranoid or nervous about protecting your seed. As long as you're doing things simply, like using like a keeping your seed secure and using the hardware wallet, I think you'll be fine. Well, we will be fine. Well, I can't promise that. Keep it simple and be smart. Lastly, don't tell anyone how much Bitcoin you have. Because you're moving from banks to Bitcoin and you own the Bitcoin, there's no one to protect you from your Bitcoin apart from yourself. If your money's in the bank, then people have to rob the bank to snake your money. But if you've got Bitcoin and people know you've got Bitcoin, all they have to do is rob you. So it's quite, obviously we're at this meetup now and everyone is interested in Bitcoin, but we're all friends here. So, but in general, probably be cautious about telling people that you own Bitcoin or how much you own. Yes. And at the end of the day, with Bitcoin, because you're moving from banks to using Bitcoin, it gives you the opportunity to be your own bank. So if you are being your own bank, then you need to take care of your own security and be smart, and so on. So yeah, just be careful and look after yourself with Bitcoin, because you are in charge, you are in control, which is a double-edged sword, but it is a sword at the end of the day. Yeah, so that's everything. So a quick summary. So, or like I like to call it, just repeating everything I just said, but a lot quicker. Any questions, just stop me. I think we've covered everything. So we're starting. So Bitcoin wallet gives you a seed, keep that secure, write it on paper. It gives you addresses, your wallet will give you addresses, so you can start receiving Bitcoins. When you want to get some Bitcoins, you can go to Coinbase or any other institution that's selling them, or you could find someone that's selling them. The institutions will be less private, individuals probably more private, because when you buy from a company, they'll want your ID. And that means your Bitcoins, the company will know which Bitcoins you own. If you were to buy Bitcoins from a company like Coinbase, they'll fund your online wallet, but those Bitcoins don't technically belong to you. If you only care about Bitcoin from an investment perspective, then maybe this is the best thing to do. Maybe you trust these companies to look after your Bitcoin more than you, but that's up to you. But because I really like Bitcoin, I would suggest withdrawing them to your own wallet, so you're in control of Bitcoin and that they are yours and you're part of the system. So there you are, withdrawing some Bitcoin, sending them. All you have to do is enter someone else's address and the amount of Bitcoins you want to send. Obviously set a fee on it, depends how quickly you want it to be mined. When you make the quick transaction, it'll, like I said, safety deposit boxes, one output, another output, unlock one, create a new one, put a new lock on it. When you send that transaction, it'll get sent into the network. It'll first of all get stored in the memory pool of all the nodes on the network, waiting for it to be mined onto the blockchain. After about 10 minutes, one of the nodes, a random node on the network, will mine the next block of transactions. Hopefully yours will be in it, depends how much of a fee you put on it, and it'll get added onto the blockchain. And then that block will get sent around the network, and then now that transaction has been confirmed, it's in the blockchain forever. When you make the transaction, the wallet should give you a transaction ID. This is just like a unique reference number, so you can track the transaction and see what's happening with it. And then you can go to like a website like blockstream.info, or a really cool one I've heard of called Learn Me a Bitcoin. And they'll have explorers on there, and what they're actually doing is they're just like a web interface for their node. So all the web is doing is just like taking the data from that blockchain and showing you all the data inside it in a user-friendly way. So when you query it, it's just showing you your transaction. Lastly, securing. When you download a wallet onto your computer, if it's connected to the internet, this is like what's called a hot wallet, because you could end up downloading a virus which could nick all your private keys from your wallet. I've never experienced it happen to me, but it's something to be think about. So what you can do instead, for extra security, instead of having your private keys in a hot wallet connected to the internet, you can get a hardware wallet, which is a small mini computer that holds your private keys for you, keeps them encrypted for you, and then when you make a transaction, this device takes control of signing them so that your private keys never get exposed to the internet, which keeps your Bitcoins even more secure. So to summary, so this is called cold storage. This is a hot wallet. Most people keep their savings in cold storage for security, and then when actually for the day-to-day spending, they'll have like a hot wallet on their phone or on their computer, or both. You can create as many wallets as you want. And then this is the Bitcoin network, just a bunch of people running the original Bitcoin software or compatible programs to create a network of computers, all communicating together. And these are called nodes on the network. They all have a memory pool for temporary for waiting area for new transactions, and the blockchain, which is the main file where all the transactions are held. When you make a transaction, it goes into the memory pool, gets propagated across the network. Eventually, one of these nodes will mine the transaction onto the blockchain, into a block, and the transaction will be in there. That block gets sent out, everyone updates, and this process updates over and over again, so new blocks transactions are being mined every 10 minutes all the time, and this is constantly growing, this blockchain, and it's running now. And so that's how Bitcoin works. Thank you, Bitcoin. Any last questions or anything? Yes, go on.
Do you know if there's any? Has anyone ever tried flooding the memory pool with like really low value transactions?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
Roger further.
Yeah, did you? Yeah. But you have to pay. You're at risk of costing yourself a lot of money though, because you have to put fees on those transactions.
Right.
You could put zero fee on the transactions, but I don't think the nodes would relay them. So to really flood the network.
Set any minimum fee they want, whether for them to accept it into their memory pool.
Okay.
So you can flood the network, was like a DDoS sort of a attack, but it'd be costing you money, so it's protected that way. Yep.
Something like if there's the equivalent of a run on the bank, if there's like a run on Bitcoin, presumably the fees then go through the roof.
Yes.
Then it becomes impossible to sell your Bitcoin effectively.
That'd be possible. You'd have to be paying more than the next person, or it would take a long time, or it'd take a few hours for your transaction to get mined into a block. But like I said, yeah, if loads of people are making transactions, Bitcoin, because of the size of the blocks, they're about 1 megabyte-ish. They used to be a megabyte. They're a bit bigger than that now, but they can only hold about, say, the network can only process about 7 transactions per second. So there's a limit to how many transactions Bitcoin actually can process. So it's limited by the amount of data the blockchain can hold, or how much data the block can hold. Does that make sense? Okay, if you fancy it, well, this has been Bitcoin Sheffield. Thank you for coming. For more fantastic presentations, please do come again next month. This is the Twitter for updates. I do use Meetup, but you don't have to use that. Just turn up. It's obviously not oversubscribed here, so please just turn up and have a good time. I'm going to head to the pub now if you fancy it. Follow James if you don't know where it is. It's basically just down here. Turn right for 2 and then left. So it's about 2 minutes, 3 minutes away. It's not too far away. But we'll head there now after this. But thank you for coming very much. So,